we have to understand all of the different things he meant when he said, I'm integrating my people into a burning building, because there are a lot of different levels on that. And we didn't touch on a lot of them because we like to keep these things brief. But that's a significant statement. And that's something that I don't think we pay enough attention to. What did he really mean when he said that he was integrating his people, or he'd integrated his people into a
Right.
burning building? Let us know in the comments. Well, let Joe know in the
Yeah.
comments.
What's going on, family? I'm just here to remind you that you can get yourself a copy of my new book, On the Shoulders of Giants, Volume 4, The Caribbean, by visiting my website, www.ontheshoulders1.com, and help support me as I continue on my mission to make sure that my people have our information, even though, there are many people trying to stop us from learning our history. But hey, we can teach ourselves. And one of the tools we can use is my new book, On the Shoulders of Giants, Volume 4, The Caribbean. Remember, visit my website, www.ontheshoulders1.com, to get your copy. And I appreciate your support. What up? What's up? What's up, my people? How y'all doing? I'm Joseph Ward. He's Patrick Irvin. So you already know what it is. It's Breakdown Fridays as we are here on this On the Shoulders of Giants channel. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back to all my returning viewers. Love y'all. Thank y'all for your support. To all my new viewers, welcome, welcome, welcome to On the Shoulders of Giants. I'm Joseph Ward. Nice to meet you. What's your name? Um, y'all know how we do it. It's Breakdown Friday, where we listen to information from master teachers, scholars, activists, advocates, all different people throughout the African diaspora who have contributed to African people um, getting better and growing and improving our conditions. We're taking the information, we're breaking down the information so we can learn it, understand it, and be able to practically use the information to improve the quality of our lives. And one thing I do want to remind people is we're using the information, we're breaking down these clips to help people get ideas of action, to spark ideas of action. Also, remember, we're not telling you to do what we do. We're not telling you to do what whatever master teacher would. We're not telling you to do what they do. We're telling you to take the information that they're giving and use it in the fields and what you do in the best way that you can use it. So if you're a baker, improve your community through baking. If you are a teacher, improve your community through teaching. Whatever your skill is, whatever your gift is, use your skill and your gift to improve your community. But this information can be used as tools to help you uh, heal your community and heal whatever we heal our total communities with the information that we have and the skills that you have. So that's the main thing. So you don't have to really think too hard about this. Um, be great at what you do. Just incorporate the information into it. That's how we get going. How we going? Ain't that right, Pat?
Word.
Word, 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 word. But you already know before we get started, I got to plug my dog book. Pat, tell them about your book.
That's my dog book right there. It was written by my dog, FICO. For those of you that want to score. And that book is called The Chasm. Uh,
But
right? The book is called The Chasm. It's a book about the divide between black men and black women in America. It goes over some of the historical causes, and it looks at some things we can do to make things better. It also looks at some myths that are currently surrounding the book. Keep in mind, for all of you that do have it and have gotten it, the book was written in 2013. It was just recently published, but that's the frame of reference. A lot of the problems we're having now, we weren't having back then, and a lot of the problems that we were having back then have since gotten worse. So
yeah,
yeah, but that's the book. Go to Amazon, type in The Chasm by Patrick Irvin. It looked like that, and then we good to go. Thank you.
there it is, my friends. There it is, my friends. So today we're breaking down a clip from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. as he's talking about how he realized that he led his people into a burning house. And as we go through, by the time we get to the end, you're going to see why we chose this clip. So let's get started, and we're going to break this clip down as we go through. So let's do it.
That dream that I had that day has at many points turned into a nightmare. Now, I'm not one to lose hope. I keep on hoping. I still have faith in the future. But I've had to analyze many things over the last few years, and I would say over the last few months. I've gone through a lot of soul searching and agonizing moments. And I've come to see that we have many more difficult days ahead, and some of the old optimism was a little superficial, and now it must be tempered with a solid realism. And I think the realistic fact is that we still have a long, long way to go, and that we are involved in a war on Asian soil.
Before we get to that, so he's talked about he's talking about his realization of where he's led people to, and to have that realization, you got to be real with yourself. So Dr. King was brave enough to admit that the path that he was on wasn't the best path for black people in the long run. But to have that realization, you got to be willing to be real with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I do think a lot of people today, because of in 2022, we have access to so much information and so many people and so much misinformation within our own communities. So with so much access to all of this information, especially here on YouTube, right? You don't know, sometimes you don't know who's who. And we have so much access to so much information. Some people are deliberately misinforming people. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so with all of this access to information, and some people are deliberately misinformed by others, and so they're giving information that they're standing on, but they haven't really uh, confirmed the information to be true. So you have a lot of people who are repeating narratives and information that in the long run is not going to help our community. But are you brave enough to really look in the mirror and assess what you've given to your community? Are you really willing to look in the mirror and to not just look at the things you've done well for your community, but are you willing to look at some of the things that may have come short? I say that because those are things that I have I've had to do for myself in the past. Doing community work, asking myself, is this really working for the people that we're serving? Because me and you had these conversations, and I've called you up many times frustrated because I'm feeling like what we're doing is not enough. But if we're not being real with ourselves, if we're not authentic with ourselves, if we don't have the courage to look at the actions that we have and what we're doing and how we are contributing or not contributing to our community, we'll never have the realization of the burning house that people are being led into, especially today, because I think it's several burning houses and several burning buildings and coliseums and stadiums and all these things that are going on right now because we have so many quote unquote leaders who are misleading people. That
Mm-hmm.
that's what I get with, but because I commend him for being brave enough to say that, and then coming up with ideas to work to reverse that. But today, there are so many people who are just hell bent on trying to be somebody that they don't give a damn about misinforming people. And those are things that we got to look out for because we in these burning buildings, and the fires have gotten hotter since Dr. King said that.
Yeah, the key thing that I took away, like, so even growing up, right, because of the household I grew up in, I never really was educated to agree with his position.
Hmm.
So there was no disrespect for him, and I want to make that clear. Like, you can disagree with somebody and still respect their position and the work they put in, which is why when old girl said what she said about Dr. King, I was right on board with lighting her up.
Yeah,
Um, but I in this clip, that part is one of the reasons why I respected him, was
yeah,
the ability, the strength, the willingness to look back and say, okay, I got this part wrong. All right. And to admit it publicly and then to try to change course and do something different.
Right.
Um, but one of the reasons I think that he was steered wrong is because he was caught up in the feelings. He says the feelings of hope and the feelings of
Mm-hmm.
optimism and
Mm-hmm.
realizing that those were superficial. Um, Most of the time, your feelings, especially when you caught up in the spur of the moment, are going to be superficial. That's what kind of drives emotions, the immediacy of what's happening. And that's we constantly get caught up in the feeling good, which is why we're always only ever dealing with surface level,
Feelings.
superficial issues. So his ability to say, they were a tad superficial, they were.
Mm.
So how did we have other leaders that countered that and that weren't caught up in the movement? And those are the people that we can point to and say those people were guided by an understanding of where we are in its proper historical context.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
that even being is one of the things that separated Malcolm and Martin. Not to say Martin was not a student of history, but to say that Malcolm, we know, was informed by some of the best and brightest
Yeah.
historical figures the
Right.
black community has ever produced.
Right.
And we can't say that about Martin. Not to say that he wasn't, just to say that we don't know
Right.
if he was not.
Right. Right.
So I think that's one of those things where I go back to all of the activists and advocates. They've got to be paired up and partnered up with the
Yes.
historians, with the people
Yes.
like yourself that are doing that groundwork to understand current times in their proper historical
Yeah.
context.
Yeah. Yeah. Feelings. I'm glad you articulate that the way you did, because feelings is, like you said, feelings is what got us into this place, and feelings is what keeps us here. And the the people who are keen on misleading our people, they understand how we operate, and they understand how to manipulate people's feelings, and they understand how to get people to do certain things that they want them to do, because people have gotten into their feelings and they learn how to get into people's feelings. I make you feel good. I make you feel radical. I make you feel this. I make you feel that. And we're, like you said, we're running off of pure feeling, and none of it has any facts or evidence to prove it. It's just straight feeling. Other groups of people who don't like us understand how we operate. They study us. We don't study us, but they study us, and they understand how we operate. So that the manipulation is easier with us, because just get us caught up in our feelings. Just get us caught up in our feelings. Like you said, going back to the clip of, I'm gonna say her name, the B Simone chick, right? She, when she made those crazy remarks about Dr. King, she was what, caught up in her what,
Mm-hmm.
feelings. Oh, that she got, the other girl said something and she got triggered, and that led her to say that crazy stuff she said out of her mouth, the disrespecting me, right? Feelings is what gets us in this situation. Feelings is what's keeping us here.
But
So
before we continue, real quick, I want to articulate because some people might not know. The position of Kings that I disagree with was the belief that we could successfully integrate into society, period. And at that time period, with things being the way they were, the idea that we could um, pass some laws and force our way into the American mainstream and have everybody be okay and cool and all of our problems be solved in this. And I understand I'm simplifying his views, but I'm trying to sum up the entirety of his views in a couple seconds, which admittedly isn't fair to him. But I never agreed with that idea that integration was even on the table, much less possible. So my stance on integration versus assimilation, blah 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 blah. But that's what I'm saying. I didn't agree with. I didn't agree with the idea that we could successfully integrate into America, and I still don't agree with the idea that we can successfully integrate into America, because America doesn't want integration; it wants assimilation of all minority cultures. But again, that's a whole nother conversation.
assimilate into white American culture. So, but let's keep going.
which, if not checked and stopped, can poison the very soul of our nation. I'm not going to say that all of our problems will be solved if the war in Vietnam is ended, but I do say that the war makes it infinitely more difficult to deal with these problems. When a nation becomes obsessed with the guns of war, it loses its social perspective, and programs of social uplift suffer. This is just a fact of history, so that we do face many more difficulties as a result of the war. It's much more difficult to really arouse a conscience during a time of war. That is something about a war.
Now, right there, and I know he's going to continue on, but for me, just in the interest of allowing him to continue on, and to make kind of the points that I'm making, um, what he's getting at right here is the fact that it's the dynamic of the society versus the culture.
Mm-hmm.
And while we're struggling with these cultural wars and these cultural stressors between white culture and black culture, we all exist within American society.
Yep.
And when a nation or a society goes to war, there becomes a drum, a hard force placed on members of that society, all culture groups, to coalesce around their national identity at the
Yep.
expense of their cultural identity.
Yep.
And so if the nation's at war, if American society is at war, and you're still talking about your cultural issues, well, now people have the opportunity to label you as unpatriotic, and they
Yep.
have the opportunity
Right.
to label you as a distraction from
Yep.
the greater needs of the society, and it makes it that much harder to get any sort of cultural issues or internal social issues dealt with, because everybody has coalesced around their national identity, and we all become an in group to the people we're at
Yeah.
war with, who are now the out group. So I just wanted to make
Yeah.
that
No,
clear.
but that's great, because in addition to that, like you're saying, we are concentrating on what's happening to us. America, if America's at war, America is concentrating on being at war. So
Mm-hmm.
that means an even greater lack of resources and care to the black community that's depending on white America.
Right.
So hey man, forget y'all problems. Like you say, come on, what? You ain't down with this war? Y'all ain't come on. Y'all black folk ain't down with this war. So y'all worry about y'all. So okay, all lives don't matter. American lives don't matter. Because it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of like the dynamic of, well, black lives matter. Well, no, all lives matter. And they're telling black people, you don't matter to us. You only matter to you. But in the greater cultural scheme of America, this is America. So assimilate. You don't matter. When they say I don't see color, they telling you you ain't. I don't see color because I don't need to see color, because I'm a part of the dominant group. Why do I need to see color? You need
Mm-hmm.
to see color. I don't need to see color. How's me not going? That's what the white people are saying. How's me not seeing color going to negatively affect me? Because in 2022, the only thing we can really do for people is try to get them fired from their jobs. You know that one of the dumbest things I feel like black people got on the internet right now is these gratifying racial moments, right? Because when black people have a gratifying racial moment, somebody hurt somebody's feelings. Some black
Mm-hmm.
person hurt somebody's feelings of another race. When white people especially have a gratifying racial moment, black people die, somebody get locked up, somebody lose resources, somebody's life is totally disrupted when white people have gratifying racial moments. We need to grow up. We need to grow. Going back to what Dr. King was saying earlier, we all up in our feelings. We need to get up out of our feelings and grow up, because in the greater scheme of things, we are still begging a nation that don't like us to do stuff for us. We still are in a position to have to beg. Forget y'all little stank, stupid, gratifying racial moments that don't mean no. So what? You feel better because you hurt somebody's feeling. Once again, when black people have gratifying racial moments, somebody's feelings hurt. When white people have them, somebody dies. Yeah. All right. Let's keep going.
war like this that makes people insensitive. It dulls the conscience. It strengthens the forces of reaction. And it brings into being bitterness and hatred and violence. I think the biggest.
Exactly. It's what we're saying. Exactly. It greater divides people, especially a group of people who are concentrating on getting their stuff together, on trying to actually become a nation of people. No, Black America, you got to put your issues to the side. Because remember, the last part of what we said is America. So you choose, you're gonna be Black, you're gonna be Americans. And we don't have the resources or the might or even the allegiance to anybody else to really put our foot down and make a stronghold. So Black folk, we got to stop doing the crazy stuff and work on us and get our stuff together so we can stop depending on America so much.
Problem now is that we got our gains over the last 12 years at bargain rates, so to speak. Didn't cost the nation anything. In fact, it helped the economic side of the nation to integrate lunch counters and public accommodations. It didn't cost the nation anything to get the right to vote established. And now we are confronting issues that cannot be solved without costing the nation billions of dollars. Now, I think this is where we're getting our greatest resistance. They may put it on many other things, but we can't get rid of slums and poverty without it costing the nation something.
Look, he dropped the mic on that one.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just real talk. Like, America gave Black people the gains that Black people have and didn't lose anything. Didn't have to give up nothing. Like he said, it cost nothing to integrate. In fact, it was an economic gain for white America because Black people, we gave up all of our stuff and started giving white people our money, giving everybody our money, but mainly white people started giving up our money. So if a nation is going to give up something, you're gonna have to bargain. You have to take it or something like that. You have to have a good bargain on the table. You're gonna have to take it if you're gonna expect white America to give up something for us that can actually benefit us.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the things we talk about a lot. As far as, especially when we're having political conversations, and it's one of the things that we have to be real about, regardless of which party you're allied to or which political narrative you agree with or believe in. America has not spent any money fixing its racial problems. All of the problems that were fixed were essentially, and this is again where we go back to this topic about Black progress versus white progress. And when there is a bottleneck to overall national progress, which causes white people to feel a bit of pain, yeah, they'll give up they'll pick some of that low-hanging fruit and drop it down to the masses so that they can alleviate the strain of that bottleneck. But when it's time to actually create challenges and issues for those people that have resources and that are in power, that has never accomplished. That's never really been accomplished, to my knowledge, in any major way in American society. Even when you look at people say slavery, when they gave up the slaves, they gave up a massive amount of blah, blah, blah. And what they miss out on is the fact that the global economy was already shifting away from the products that were typically being produced by the slaves.
And not to cut you off, but just to cut in and add to that, you got to going back and look at when Britain ended slavery. That was a chain reaction for the rest of the world. America was just the last one to get the ripple effect from that chain reaction. But like you said, the rest of the world had moved to a public anti-slavery stance. Not to say they were truly anti-slavery, but they moved to a more public anti-slavery stance because still having a slave stance,
especially
outside of America, was starting to be looked down upon publicly. Not really, but in the eyes of the public like that, but not behind closed doors.
Right. It became a social stigma to
Right.
still be and you got met with all of the forces of social sanctions.
Right.
And again, I'm speaking specifically to America. I'm not talking to European countries or any of the other countries. For
Yeah.
America, by the
Yeah.
time America gave up slavery, it was more economically beneficial and socially advantageous to give up slavery than it was to keep it. So again, that was low hanging fruit. There was no cost to that, and many of the slave owners, like those in DC and various other places, were got reparations for the loss of
Right.
property.
Right. Right.
So,
Right.
so, but go ahead.
America was becoming more industrial, and all the slave owners and people who lost their slaves and things got repaid.
Right. And so, but and we see signs of that all over the place. And this is it's a whole nother conversation when you start getting into the dynamics of the end of slavery. But suffice it to say, the North had become the major economic output of the country, while the South still maintained most of the slaves.
Hmm.
So that dynamic in and of itself tells you a little bit about the economic future of America and where it was headed. That the parts of the country that did not have the majority of the slaves were more economically prosperous. So everything he's hitting on, and at that point, is accurate. And that's something we got to remember. During the Great Compromise of 1877, something I talk about a lot because I don't feel like it's emphasized enough, when people were forced to put their feet to the fire, when the Southern Democrats at the time, the Southern Democrats were really forcing the issue on Reconstruction, and the political powerful classes of America were going to have to give up something and potentially go back to war to keep to keep black people from being re-enslaved and all these other things. They caved. And that's how we went from Reconstruction to the Black Codes and Jim Crow.
Yeah. Yeah.
They caved. So
Yeah.
every time that pressure has been put on for them to really pay out to make things better,
You mean
the
like the
price has
Democrats?
never been paid.
You mean like the current Democrats?
Yeah, I mean, you go down it, yeah, like every single time.
Yeah.
They kept. So he's 100% accurate in his statements, and even to this day, we're in 2022 now, the middle of the end of
At the end,
2022,
yeah.
and we still haven't seen. They put up all these panels, they make all of these committees, these review boards, these laws that are going to set up people to look at and talk about and feel on and touch on and smell on and
Hey,
taste on all these solutions. But when it's time to do something,
they don't about to do
nothing
nothing.
nothing ever gets done.
Hey,
And that's something that as black people we really gotta like remember.
look, the best thing for us to remember to stop depending on white America to do anything for us is remember they have meetings to see if they're going to meet to discuss if they're going to meet for reparations. They have meetings to discuss if they're going to actually meet to do anything for us. We got to do it for ourselves. The power is in us. Our future is in us. It ain't in nobody, no other group of people give a damn about us getting what we need, getting our liberation, improving ourselves. Why would other groups of people who are competing against us actually give a damn about us improving our situation? Whether you want to believe it or not, other groups of people are competing. It might not be the people you know, and it might be, but damn it, people are competing for wealth, power, land, and resources, and people have been competing for that since the beginning of time. That's
I
why
want
warfare has always existed.
I want to say two things real quick, and then I'm gonna shut up and we can move on. One, everybody's competing.
Everybody.
As an individual, you're not gonna see the cultural forces of competition. They're there. Anytime uh goddamn Jesus open a company and most of the people he employs are people of his ethnicity, and you say, well, what's wrong with that? That's competition at work on
Yeah.
a cultural level. So
Right.
everybody's competing, period. Whether you want to admit that you're participating or not, yes, you two are competing. The other thing I want to say is exactly what you just said about having a meeting, about having a meeting, about having a meeting, about having a meeting.
Mm-hmm.
That's we need to be real about the fact that that's in essence what it means to have a seat at a table that's not meant for you.
Yes, yes. Everybody always talking about having a seat at the table. You at the table. Some of y'all at the table,
Right. Yeah.
and nothing changing.
And you, because you at the table, you happy, right? Thank you for giving me a seat at your table. So I already did you one favor. I'm letting you sit here. All
Right.
right, we gonna set up. No, trust me. We gonna set up a meeting to talk about your issues next week.
We'll get to it. We'll get to it.
Now,
We
not
got
only are you ecstatic about having a seat at the table that I gave you, but you're excited about having a promissory note for getting another promissory note about a later promissory note.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Hey, and we want tangible things. We're only going to get tangible gains by doing it ourselves. So, yeah.
I feel that nonviolence is really the only way that we can follow because violence is just so self-defeating. A riot ends up creating many more problems for the Negro community than it solves. You can, through violence, burn down a building, but you can't establish justice. You can murder a murderer, but you can't murder through violence. You can murder a hater, but you can't murder hate. And what we are trying to get rid of is hate and injustice and all of these other things that continue the long night of man's inhumanity to man. When we allow free-
So, I have a greater understanding of his stance on nonviolence.
Mm-hmm.
When I was younger, I vehemently disagreed with his stance on nonviolence. With the greater understanding that I have now, um, I I get what he's saying about nonviolence from the context that I learned that he was coming from. So basically, because I had a couple years ago, I did a breakdown of one of his, I think it was the "Where Do We Go From Here" speech, and was talking about nonviolence in that speech, and a lot of people, and I understand why some people believe what I'm about to say is because of the way it was articulated. But a lot
Mm-hmm.
of people believe that he just like, hey, we ain't gonna do nothing. If somebody, even if they touch us, we ain't gonna do nothing because he had to turn the other cheek,
Mm-hmm.
quoting all these things. So a lot of people believe that his idea is just let them beat on us and justice will come someday. So from my understanding of doing the breakdown of his speech and um, other things that he spoke about and pertaining to nonviolence, he was not saying that we shouldn't do anything at all.
Mm-hmm.
He was saying we need to be strategic about how we go about responding to violence and or being violent because we are behind enemy lines and we
Mm-hmm.
don't have the resources, the numbers, the infrastructure, or anything to really bring the fight to white America. I.e., white America has an army, has reserves, it has law enforcement officers, and it has militias. We have disorganized gangs and killers and thugs who are afraid to kill white people. In 2022, that's what we have. So you can talk about bringing war and violence to a nation like America, who it has the greatest army in the world, but you are behind enemy lines and you're depending on this enemy for resources. So are you really capable of bringing the war to these people? Or if violence is going to be the step that we take, are we really capable of winning this? That's what I was taking. That's what I took from it.
Yeah, I think, and I agree. I think one of the things we have to keep in mind is that Dr. Martin Luther King was a lot smarter than a lot of people give him credit for.
Yes, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, and so his stance on nonviolent, like you, when I was younger, I thought the same thing you did. But as I grew and I read and I researched and I gained a little bit more understanding of the way the world works, it came to make sense to me. He was speaking specifically, in my opinion, about physical violence. Because marching in the streets and protest are a form of social violence. Boycotts are a form of economic violence, and he utilized those tools at every chance he got when necessary. But the other game he was playing was understanding we're behind enemy lines and
Yeah.
understanding the forces that move American society into action. America, especially in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, wanted to be seen as the shining city on the
Yeah.
hill,
Yeah.
the perfect city where anybody could come and be anything. And so with that vision that America, that propaganda that America was putting out to the world, the greatest way to damage America was to damage that visual that America had presented. So what better way to do that than to show images of Americans attacking American citizens for no other reason than the color of their skin? That's where you hear this moral high ground argument
Right.
that people
Right.
oftentimes make. He was showing the rest of the world. He was essentially threatening America's image
Yeah.
in the rest of the world
Yeah.
by not fighting back and putting himself in a position where he knew Americans were going to be Americans.
Yeah.
And to a large part, we can't say it worked. But one of the unsung messages behind that is that not only did it work because he threw damage on the image of America through those actions, and America had to shore up its image, but it also worked because there was that violent alternative.
Yes. Malcolm X was the alternative.
Right. And that's the part I feel like was what is always missing when we get into these conversations where people try to create a issue between those two dynamics. Those two dynamics are related. They're brother and sister. They go hand in hand. They work toe in toe.
Yeah.
Without a nonviolent threat, nobody
Hey,
cares about your peaceful solution. I'm
they
sorry,
would
without a
rather
violent threat, nobody cares about your peaceful solution.
see Martin than Malcolm.
Right. And I think Malcolm understood that at an
Mhm.
earlier time than Martin did because Malcolm said it. But he
Yeah.
understood it at an earlier time. Now he didn't understand it right out the gate,
Right.
but I think as well, Malcolm was more intelligent than we give him credit for as well at a later time. And so that's where I look at all of these uh quote unquote black militia groups and all of these other groups. I said quote unquote, yeah, we know. But if they could stop, and this is a behind the scenes conversation, but let's be honest, ain't nobody having no goddamn conversation behind the scenes, so I don't give a fuck. If they would stop attacking and antagonizing the nonviolent groups and work with them and partner with them and become that darker alternative that pushes cultures and communities towards those more positive solutions, then we could get a lot more done. We could get a
We have
lot more done.
a lot more soldiers. Like we find a reason to argue and to separate ourselves. That's how it feels. In 2022 right now, it feels that black people, like, we wake up and flip a coin and just say, I'm a today, if it lands on heads, I'm gonna be positive. If it lands on tails, I'm gonna be against my people. Oh, tails, it's tails again. 7 days in a row, it's tails. I'm gonna find something to argue with people about. Well, you're non-violent, I'm violent, so we can't work together. What you mean?
Right,
What you mean? Yes, we can. That means, and everybody in the army don't go out and fight.
right.
Everybody don't go out and fight. So there are jobs for everybody. This person may not be a soldier. Cool. How can you help? What can you bring? You might be in intelligence or something. You can there
Might be
are
a
ways for
mechanic.
us to work together. Like, but we have to switch. We have to switch our minds from being so combative and against each other to a more solution based. How can we make these entities work together? How can we work together? How can we support each other? If
Per,
we're
per,
not thinking like that, we tripping.
Perfect example, right? Everybody knows America, not even America, right? we'll use the Ukraine situation. Ukrainians have diplomats, they have envoys, they have all of that. They have the channels and the means to communicate with Russia. You know why Russia don't really give a damn about what they got to say? Because Russia don't feel like they're a military threat. They can't do anything.
Right.
You know why everybody listens when America speaks?
Because America is a military threat.
Because,
it's the greatest military threat in the world.
Right. That's the violence backing the not there. And there are people in the American government, absolutely, that are 100% to their core non-violent. They don't believe that America should have the military that it has, that we should be doing the things that we're doing militarily, and they're going out there and they're speaking their truth. But the smart ones of them understand that the reason anybody even gives a damn what they have to say is because we have the military we have, and we're doing the things that we're doing militarily.
And America is willing to destroy everything. So, like, America spends over $800 billion a year on arms and warfare. So a nation like America, if you're talking about bringing the war to America from the inside of America, the nation that spends $800 billion on war, and we're behind enemy lines and we lack the resources. Somebody tell me how that's going to work. How is it going to work? We are cut off from any outside allies because, hell, we don't like them either. Any black allies that we have outside the United States, we don't like them either. And I'm not, and when I say that, I'm not being absolute in that. I'm not saying everybody has these issues. I personally, me and Pat, we don't get into all those other things that people get into. If you black and you down, we down. I don't care where you from. If you down, we down, right? And if you're not down, I'm not gonna waste my energy on trying to get you to be down or trying to be against you, unless you're trying to really break this whole house down, then that's a whole nother story. But other than that, but it's like we find a way, we find a reason to argue and to fight against each other. So you can talk all that big talk, all that killer talk, but if we need allies, who's going to be our allies? What nation that actually has resources, that actually has an army that can do something, are our allies? Crickets, right? So guess what? We need to get our ass on building these things up. But first, we got to build ourselves up internally. We have to get our stuff together internally. We got to stop fighting with each other internally. But you can't talk about taking a violent stance against America. And hell, half of us don't even know how to just fight hand-to-hand combat.
And half of us ain't in good enough shape to have a sustained hand-to-hand combat.
Half of Black America is overweight. What kind of army are we going to make? We're going to have to prove ourselves from the physical level, intellectual level, spiritual level, emotional level, psychological level, and the communal level, and like individual levels, communal levels, family levels. We don't have families. You can't go to war. If you go to war, we ain't trying to produce families. Now, you go to war like that, it's going to be even more disarray. And in times of war, you need resources. Where our resources going to come from?
And to take it all the way back, I think that is one of the issues that I always think about. And even to take it even back even further, when he talks about I've integrated my people into a burning building, a burning house. We need to understand what that means. The American system right now, as it stands, is failing white people.
Yes.
Like, it's failing white Americans. So if it's still true that when white people catch a cold, black people catch the flu, what does it mean when the system set up to empower white people is failing even the vast majority of white people? What does that mean for black people? And I think that's something else that we got to consider. We're getting the bulk of our resources from them. They are the reference group for American society, and black people are a part of American society. Everything white people do, you got a strong contingent of black people trying to follow their lead.
Yeah.
And
now have a black version of everything white.
Right. And that is and don't even get me started on the aggravation of that. From Black Hercules to Black Ariel to black.
Little Mermaid. Yeah, I don't care about
Yeah,
none of that.
yeah, like but that's a whole nother subject. Um, we have to understand all of the different things he meant when he said, I'm integrating my people into a burning building, because there are a lot of different levels on that. And we didn't touch on a lot of them because we like to keep these things brief. But that's a significant statement. And that's something that I don't think we pay enough attention to. What did he really mean when he said that he was integrating his people, or he'd integrated his people into a
Right.
burning building? Let us know in the comments. Well, let Joe know in the
Yeah,
comments.
yeah, yeah. What do you think he meant? Now, I do want to say this. I want to be clear. Yes, we are stating that we're behind enemy lines. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
we're stating that we don't have the resources. Yes, we're stating that we don't have the unity. We don't have the physical fitness. We don't have all these things. But that don't mean we can't get in shape. That don't mean we
Mm-hmm.
can't get there. I believe if we put the work in that we need to do on ourselves as individuals and as a group, we can get to where we need to be. We can empower and strengthen ourselves. It may be a mountain to climb, but it's not impossible. It's
No, it's
not
not.
us becoming stronger as black people in America. It's not impossible, but we have to be like starting off at the beginning of the clip, being honest in our introspection, being honest about where we are in our conditions. If we don't be honest about it, we're not going to fix the situation the way we're supposed to. All we're going to do is put a band-aid on the damn shotgun wound. And how that look? That looks stupid, right? So let's not do that. Let's have an honest assessment and truly, truly, truly put the work in to fix the issue so we can become a formidable contender. There's a there's a there's racial competition going on in the world, and black people around the world, but black people in America, we're not last, but we toward the back in the world. But we talking about in this country, we last, but we can improve that. It's really on us. The ball is in our court. The ball is literally in our court. So going back to what I was saying earlier, start with what you do well. Start with what you do well. Take your take your talents, take your skills, take your resources into the communities and make sure you're helping others. But at the same time, make sure you're doing the work on yourself and you're seeking the help for yourself to fix yourself, to enrich and empower yourself so we can really, really fix our situation. Because that's the whole point of us doing these breakdowns is to get our mindset on fixing our situations, improving yourself. What are you doing on a regular basis to improve yourself? What are you doing? If you're not doing anything on a regular basis to improve yourself or your community, you're wasting time. And we're because white America is not going to give us anything. You heard Dr. King. If they got to give up something to give us something, we ain't getting it. If they can give it up for free, would they give us something and not lose something? They give that all day, every day. But if they got to give up something, they ain't gonna do it. So we got to take what we need. We got to take what we need. But in order to take what we need, we have to be in the proper shape as a group of people. And right now, we ain't in shape, but we can get there. Let's goddamn it start. Let's do it. We can, man. We can. But if we don't, we're the only ones to blame for that. You know what I'm talking about? So that's our breakdown, man. That's our breakdown. I'm glad I chose that clip. That was a good clip. That was a good clip. Dr. King, he did his thing on that. He went in on that. But I love it because it gives people a different perspective on Dr. King. Because I'm so tired of people just boxing him into his I Have a Dream speech and people trying to weaponize the words from his I Have a Dream speech like that's the only thing he said. Nah, go study Dr. King. He said a lot. He said a
Mm-hmm.
lot of things that white people will not say. And remember this too before we close that. White people didn't like him when he was alive. So
Mm-hmm.
all this stuff that you see from these people didn't like him when he was alive. So, but let's utilize all the information that we got from our teachers and our scholars, our advocates, and our activists, and let's fix our situation. Joseph Ward, Patrick Irvin. This is On the Shoulders of Giants Breakdown Friday. We out of here like yesterday.